Hello, my name is Jaru, and today I'm talking about Deltarune. There will be major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale, so please play them both before watching this. Today I'm going to be giving a quick theory about how the Light World's clocks may hold a secret connected with the Dark Worlds. If this style of shorter theory videos interests you, consider supporting me on Ko-fi or Patreon. Without further ado, enjoy today's theory. The first thing to point out about these clocks is that they are all broken. This is implied by them all having mostly different times, and by several of them having times that make no sense given that they are shown after school has let out. Them being broken is further implied once you start paying attention to the timeline of events in Chapter 1 and 2. We see Alfie's clock before and after school in both chapters, and it is always reading 2 o'clock. Toriel's clock reads 10 o'clock both before and after we go to the cyberworld. The unused classroom clock always reads 6:30, and we visit that room at several different times. The hardest to prove is the diner clock, but it's incredibly unlikely to be functioning either. It reads 2 o'clock at the end of Chapter 1 and at the end of Chapter 2, despite the timeline of events being radically different. For a refresher, in Chapter 1, Chris and Susie get out of the Card Kingdom after school has ended, but before the sun has set. This means they likely spent over 8 hours in the Card Kingdom, and they arrived in the Light World anytime between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. In Chapter 2, however, the school day is over before we even enter the cyberworld. If it took over 8 hours to traverse the Card Kingdom, and Chris doesn't even enter the much larger cyberworld until after 4:30, then the idea of them arriving at the diner in Chapter 2 at the exact same time they arrived in Chapter 1 is just extremely unlikely. This brings us to the big question. Why are all the clocks broken in Deltarune's hometown? The answer is, I have no idea. Frankly, this is the sort of minor detail that Toby Fox could easily gloss over. Maybe all the clocks aren't working because nobody cares enough to fix them. Maybe dark fountains cause nearby clocks to malfunction. Maybe the universe is trapped in a time loop and that causes clocks to break down. Or maybe Toby just liked the aesthetic of analog clocks but didn't want to precisely define the timeline so as to keep things mysterious. Who knows? The truth is, I am not interested in the actual canon reason for these clocks being broken. It's far more important to me to figure out the meta reason behind this design choice. What is the significance of having these specific times on these clocks? What lore can we deduce? What is Toby Fox trying to communicate to us? My answer to those questions is what I will discuss now. My theory is that the clocks in Deltarune are subtle hints as to the location of future dark worlds. This theory first occurred to me when analyzing the school's clocks. When you look at this layout, you can see the clock in Toriel's class is pointing north and northwest, which just so happens to point at the unused classroom and the closet, the locations of the first 2 dark worlds. Furthermore, the clock in the unused classroom is pointing straight down, as if it's signaling that this room was the location of a dark fountain. Now, before anyone points it out, this layout of the rooms is only accurate from a meta standpoint. Technically, these rooms are rotated 180 degrees in the actual school layout, but that's only important in universe, and even then, the layout of the school doesn't really make much sense to begin with. For example, where are these lights coming from if the windows are pointing towards this hallway? Why are there 2 windows in these external shots, yet 3 spots of light inside the building? And don't even get me started on places like the flower shop. Its internal design and external design are completely incompatible. If the physical reality of the hometown doesn't matter to Toby Fox, then it also doesn't matter to me. That just leaves the meta angle, and that's what I'm focusing on in my theory. The last bit of evidence supporting my hypothesis is the diner clock, which also sits at 2 o'clock. That means it points north with one hand, which just so happens to point directly at the Dreamer household, the location of Chapter 3's Dark World. So, given that all of these clocks are confirmed to be pointing at previous and or future Dark Worlds, what more can we learn from them? Well, Alfie's clock points northeast and north. The northeast part probably just refers to the castle town, but the north hand likely refers to this final classroom. And I would argue that this class is specifically for art. Spamton references easels in the same line that he mentions CRTs, which was itself a hint towards Chapter 3's Dark World. We also haven't seen an arts and crafts room in the school despite all the drawings everywhere. As such, I would argue that this class will be the location of an art-based Dark World. That just leaves one clock hand unaccounted for, the northeast pointing hand in the diner. However, this one's a bit tricky. When you look at this map, you can tell that the clock could be pointing at any of these upper buildings. It does seem more likely to be pointing at Bratty or Napstablook's house, but wait, there's an issue. As you can see, the tops of these buildings don't match the bottoms we see on the lower screen. That means between these two screens is a section of the hometown that Chris skips over. This is an issue because by adding even just one street between these two layers, that drastically alters where this clock hand may be pointing. It greatly decreases the likelihood that it's pointing at the house on the left, and even opens the door to it pointing at Asgore's shop, which does have a double door inside. Double doors, while not required for Dark Worlds, have been associated with two so far. But wait, there's more. It's entirely possible that when the full game is released, Toby will expand upon the hometown and allow us to explore more areas. That potentially includes these streets that get skipped over during this loading screen. As such, while the clock hand could be pointing at the houses on this street, it could also easily be pointing at a building on the streets that we haven't even seen yet. In summary, my theory is that the clocks in the light world are hints about the placements of dark fountains, with Alfie's clock pointing us towards the final classroom and the diner clock pointing us towards Asgore's shop. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. This one was short, but I figured it would be nice to make a few quicker theories to flesh out my upload schedule. If you enjoyed this short form theory crafting, please let me know. I'd be delighted to make more theories like this. And if you really enjoyed, consider supporting me on Patreon. Speaking of which, a huge thanks goes out to all the wonderful folks who have joined my Patreon. A special thanks go to E-Roll, Suit Number 1, Leo Dragon Tamer, Limping Penguin, Tibby Fitzhugh, and Colton Tyndall. An extra special thanks go to Super CKX7, Aspen Frost, and Colin for supporting me on the Ralsei tier. And a huge thanks go to Spindrift and I'm Jaden, the only big shots willing and able to support me on the Spampton tier. Y'all have been a huge aid to me in this last month, and I hope to continue to be worthy of that support. I hope you all have an incredible summer. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you've got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.